So I hope this is revealing how difficult it would be to make sense of all this, especially for the early Christians. You know, the early church was not a golden age, as some people like to think it was. There was much confusion doctrinally, and frankly, there was a lot of chaos. There was a lot of heresies that popped up. In fact, some denied that Jesus even came in the flesh to try to solve this problem. So with all the confusion that abounded, it was a real task for the church to nail down a proper understanding of who the person of Jesus was. It should be easier for us. I use this illustration quite often. Think about it like a pioneer. If a pioneer has a destination in mind, but there's no road paved, there's no signs to get him there, nobody's ever been there before, and he takes a wrong route and he ends up somewhere he wasn't supposed to be, he doesn't arrive at the destination, he can be forgiven. I mean, after all, there's no path to get him to the destination he's going. He's blazing the trail, if you will. He's the pioneer. So he can be forgiven. But flash forward 2,000 years, and we have a road, we have road signs, we have maps, and we have GPS, and we have volumes and volumes and volumes of instructions on how to get to a certain destination. And then we don't arrive at the right destination? Well, at that point, we're either foolish or a rebel. If we refuse to take the roadmap, if we refuse to follow the signs, if we refuse to learn from those who came before us, who have taken this trail before us, we're either foolish or we're rebels. So fortunately for us, we've had 2,000 years of contemplation on this topic to help us make sense of all of it. And we would be wise to learn from those people. Because all of this has to do with what my favorite branch of theology is, which is Christology, which is the study of the nature, the person, and role of Jesus Christ. Who was this Jesus that we worship? And when it comes to Christology, there's really two different types of Christology that rose up to make sense of how Jesus can be God and man. We have what's called Monophysite Christology, and we have what's called Diophysite Christology. And don't get intimidated by those labels. It just means one nature Christology and two nature Christology. Monophysite means one nature. Diophysite means two nature. Now, somebody that believes in Monophysite Christology will believe that Jesus only had a divine nature, which I hope that's been demonstrated that would be very difficult to defend. One of the early proponents of this was a man named Apollinarius, and there's been a term that's rose up called Apollinarianism. Now, Apollinarius believed that Jesus had a human body, but he only had a divine mind. His waking conscious was divine, was God. So he believed that Jesus had a human body, it was animate, it moved, but he denied that Jesus had a human mind. Now the problem with this view is we have an incomplete human nature of Jesus. Really, it makes Jesus playing pretend throughout the entire incarnation. It makes him, as a baby, just kind of pretending to be a baby. Just kind of pretending to grow in wisdom and knowledge, in stature, in learning obedience. If he had a divine mind, then his body was really just a costume. So this view undermines the notion of Jesus having a human will and a human mind. And this is contradicted in the scriptures by seeing that Jesus experienced human emotions, temptations, free will. I don't know what they would do, how Apollinarius would have handled Jesus in the garden. If it is your will, Lord, let this cup pass from me. Seeing a parent struggle in Jesus. Not disobedience. He was willing to submit to the Father's plan. But legitimate human anguish in Jesus. If he had a divine mind in a human body, it'd be difficult to understand how he would have been able to feel that legitimate anguish or to genuinely be tempted. So, Monophysite Christology, one-nature Christology, was rejected as heresy in the early church. But that didn't leave Diophysite, two-nature Christology, off the hook. The two-nature Christology was settled on as orthodoxy, but there was a man named Nestorius. And we often call this Nestorianism. Now, Nestorius was a Christian theologian, and he was the patriarch of Constantinople in the 5th century. Nestorius went further than just saying that Jesus had a divine nature and a human nature. He went as far as to say Jesus was two persons. He effectively had a human Jesus and a God Jesus. He said Jesus was basically two people. And he took aim at Mary being called Theotokos, which means God-bearer. Now, I know that over the centuries, things have changed when it comes to referring to Mary as Mother of God or God-bearer. That's typically a term now used to exalt Mary and her status, and that should be rightly rejected. But the original church that started calling her the Mother of God, or the God-bearer, Theotokos in the Greek, they were not saying this to exalt Mary. They were saying this to affirm who she gave birth to. They're saying she gave birth to God in the flesh. So they would call her Theotokos as a way of affirming that Jesus was God. Now, he took aim at that. He basically said she just gave birth to Jesus the man. But the problem with this view is there's Christological disunity in Christ. You basically have two Jesuses. And if Jesus was not, while he was in the flesh, God in the flesh, then we can't say Emmanuel. We can't rightfully say that God was in the flesh dwelling among us. So Nestorianism was rejected as heresy by the Council of Chalcedon, and rightfully so.